Welcome back. Okay, let's dive right into this next episode. Now, if you've been following our journey so far, you know exactly what we've been through. We started out with all this excitement, totally stumbled into the wildly messy reality of food production, and then, finally, we stopped guessing. We tracked down that silent, agonizing 39,000 naira leak that was literally draining our business dry. And rather than just tossing our hands up and accepting it, we made a pretty radical decision. We took our manual tracking, the daily discipline that finally gave us a clear picture, and decided, hey, let's build our own digital system. We decided to build ZAAGOB ERP.
So, because we had finally mapped out our real-life operations on paper, we felt this massive, incredible sense of relief. We genuinely thought the hard part was completely behind us. We had a working system. Sure, it was a manual, paper-based system, but it proved we could actually track our production, our sales, and all of our leftovers. We knew the exact problem we were trying to solve. So in our heads, we were like, we just need to hand this over and code the solution. We just got to digitize the paper.
You would naturally assume that translating a manual working system into a digital tool would be totally straightforward. Just take the columns from the paper, slap them into a computer program, and boom, you've got software. It sounded so logical. But let me tell you, it wasn't even close to being simple. We were about to hit a brick wall that completely flipped our perspective upside down.
We very quickly crashed into a pretty stark reality. The factory floor is just inherently messy. Production doesn't always go exactly as planned. Ingredients get spilled, the price of eggs absolutely skyrockets overnight, a whole batch gets burnt, and staff make honest mistakes. That is just real life. But software? Software is rigid. It demands absolute structure, perfectly defined processes, and flawless, consistent behavior. It wants a clean 1 or a 0, not a, well, maybe half a batch got ruined.
And so, this fundamental question just brought our entire development to a screeching halt. How do we build something beautifully simple for a reality that is honestly chaotic and entirely unpredictable? This forced us to pause everything. We had to sit back and rethink our entire approach. Because we realized that if this software couldn't handle the sheer messiness of a real bakery or factory floor, it was going to be completely useless.
That realization led us to a very, very strict rule. Absolutely no features just for show. We completely refused to build something that looked visually stunning on a monitor but just fell apart in the daily chaos on the ground. You see so many apps out there with these gorgeous, super complicated graphs and endless drop-down menus. But think about it. When your hands are literally covered in flour and you have 30 trays of bread coming out of a blazing hot oven, you simply do not have the time to navigate a complicated dashboard. So we established a filter for everything we were building. Every single feature had to pass one strict litmus test. Would we actually use this in our own production? If we looked at a new button or a fancy new report and hesitated, if we thought, well, maybe in a perfect world we'd use this, the answer was an automatic no, and we tossed it out. We had to be absolutely ruthless. We embraced some seriously aggressive simplification. We stripped away all the confusing reports, all the unnecessary bells and whistles, until we were left with just these 4 absolutely vital actions. 1. Record production. 2. Track sales. 3. Monitor costs. And 4. See profit clearly. If a feature didn't directly, instantly serve one of those 4 pillars, it just didn't make the cut. We were designing purely for speed, accuracy, and absolute necessity.
But you know what? Even with all that aggressive simplification, it still wasn't smooth. Despite cutting everything way back, some workflows still felt incredibly clunky and complicated when we actually tried to click through them. Ideas that looked absolutely perfect, literally genius on a whiteboard, failed terribly in practice. We quickly realized that designing software in a quiet, air-conditioned room is wildly different from trying to use it in a noisy, fast-paced production environment.
So we decided to do what most software creators completely skip. We tested the tool rigorously during our own real production days. We didn't simulate anything. We used it while orders were backing up, while the ovens were hot, while the pressure was really on. And wow, that pressure exposed exactly what was failing. A button that took too many clicks? We felt that pain immediately. A screen that loaded a second too slowly? It drove us absolutely crazy. So we just kept refining.
We went through iteration after iteration. We kept refining the software again and again under that intense, real-world pressure. We tweaked, we adjusted, we deleted, we rebuilt the whole thing. Until, finally, something just clicked. The system actually stopped feeling like clunky, demanding software. It stopped feeling like this annoying extra chore we had to do at the end of an exhausting shift.
And that right there was our true breakthrough moment. We reached this incredible point where the digital system felt like an invisible, totally natural extension of how we already worked. It wasn't just built anymore. It was highly usable and entirely reliable. It mapped perfectly to the actual physical movements and workflows of our staff. It wasn't fighting our reality. It was finally embracing it.
For the very first time, we had a system that showed us the absolute truth of our operations. It captured reality, flaws, spills, and all. It showed us the hard truth about our waste, our raw material usage, and our actual output. And most importantly, it was a system we could completely 100% trust. We weren't relying on memory or gut feelings anymore.
And the result of seeing that truth? Our profit actually became predictable. Because we could suddenly see everything so crystal clearly, our mistakes became instantly visible. If a batch was off, we knew immediately. Our decisions got incredibly sharp because they were suddenly backed by real-time data. We weren't lying awake wondering if we had a good day or a bad day. We knew exactly, down to the exact naira, what our profit was. The fog had completely lifted.
And then, sitting right there in the middle of all this operational clarity, breathing this huge sigh of relief that we had finally secured our own business, a new, incredibly intrusive thought arrived. It was this nagging question that ended up changing everything yet again. Wait, if this works so perfectly for us, how many other food businesses out there desperately need exactly this?
We realized pretty quickly that this wasn't just about our factory anymore. We started thinking about all the other hardworking operators and producers out there. You know, the people waking up at 4 a.m. to start the ovens, the folks managing absolutely chaotic supply chains, the ones pouring their entire hearts into their products but operating completely blind, lacking the clarity they so rightfully deserved.
We knew exactly how deeply painful that lack of visibility felt. We still remembered the sting of that 39,000 naira loss like it was yesterday. And we suddenly found ourselves staring at the screen, realizing we were holding the very tool that could solve this massive, industry-wide problem. We didn't just have a neat piece of software, we had a literal lifeline for food businesses.
So the path forward was pretty obvious to us. We had to share it. We couldn't just keep this secret weapon to ourselves while others struggled with the exact same problems we had just managed to solve. But as you probably know, knowing what you have to do and actually doing it are two wildly different things. Honestly, it was terrifying. It was deeply, deeply uncomfortable.
Because think about it. Building a quiet, internal tool for your own team is one thing. If it breaks, you just walk over to your staff and say, hey, don't click that button today, I'm fixing a bug. But crossing that threshold, putting it out into the public, into the hands of other businesses whose actual livelihoods depend on it working perfectly, that is a completely different, massively intimidating challenge. The stakes were suddenly infinitely higher.
We were stepping entirely out of our comfort zone, moving from being just food producers to becoming software providers for an entire industry. And that massive leap is exactly what we are going to unpack next time. So keep an eye out for our next episode, where we face the terrifying reality of launching ZAAGOB ERP to the world. It gets intense, and you definitely won't want to miss it.